I would like to correct him, though.
28 words, mostly flattering, and then kick it back to the big guy. Right?
The one correction, though, for what Cabot said, he said he was kicking it over to the big guys. There is only one giant guy on set, that is Dennis Prager, followed perhaps by Matt Walsh. The rest of us very moderately sized guys.
Dennis, you would appreciate the showbiz of this joint. We decided that we were going to make this video, right, where all the Daily Wire hosts in black and white, sort of silhouetted lighting, we're going to encourage people to go and vote.
It worked.
Clearly it worked. They lined us all up in front of the LED wall. And they framed up the picture, and then the director came over and said, "Yeah, you're all too short except for Matt Walsh. So we're going to make you stand on a box, and we're going to make you stand on a box. We're going to make you stand on a box." I wish you had been there so that Matt would know the humiliating reality of being asked to step onto an apple box. You know?
So, guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good you feeling right now? Like, really, let's just enjoy, right? There's gonna be so many more battles in the future. There's gonna be so much more to come. The left's just gonna go away. I understand that it feels in the moment as though, the 1,000-year reign has begun. but in reality, there will be battles for tomorrow. But let's just take a moment to just bask in the awesomeness that is America, because this country just kicks royal ass. I mean, seriously, the American people stood up on their hind legs and they said, "No, we are tired of this. You have been proclaiming that Donald Trump is not normal for 8 years at this point. For 8 long years, you've been claiming that he's not normal. And what you mean by that is that he acts kind of weird and says kind of funny things. But the actual normal that we want is, to be able to live with our families without you bothering us and telling us that our kids are members of the opposite sex, and that we ought to be able to keep the property, that we build wealth and actually create things and then keep the products and exchange them, and that we ought to be able to have a safe and secure border, and that we ought to be able to have a powerful America." That's normal. Normal is what my parents wanted, what my grandparents wanted. That's normal. And you know what? I don't care what Donald Trump says. I care what Donald Trump does. And what Donald Trump does is he brings back the normal. And so the normies rose up yesterday and in a fit of righteous wrath smote down the non-believers in normiedom. And it's damned wonderful. It really is. It just is great.
It's great. I feel great. I feel like I'm on cloud 9. It also could be slightly sleep deprivation because 2 hours, about 48 in the last 48 hours. But to me, and we talked about this last night, but what I keep coming back to is that this really feels like just a total rejection of the leftist project on pretty much every count. Certainly on all the big counts, abortion, DEI, trans, the economy, crime, immigration. This was just a total rejection of the leftist position and all that. Now, you hesitate to say that because it makes it sound like, well, it's over. We can all go home. The fight's over. Of course, it's not. The fight now. It's just a matter of, well, we know that we know we have a winning argument on all of these things. We have the winning argument, but to translate the winning argument into actual victory, beyond this election, legislative victories, policy victories, that becomes the.
Can I just say before everybody else jumps in, I want to give a special shout out to Matt Walsh, because I was talking with Jeremy and Dennis a little bit earlier. And listen, everybody at this company has been working unbelievably hard to make things like this happen. That's what we do here, which is why you should, in fact, go subscribe and join us. 47% off with code Trump, because he's the 47th president, thank God. But Matt's 3 big sort of hits over the past 3-4 years. What is a Woman, which made the trans issue absolutely toxic to the left and was used in every single major campaign this election cycle. The Budweiser boycott, which was the American people saying, you are not allowed to just leverage down on us a bunch of trash that we don't want. And then combine that with what you just did with Am I Racist, where you completely exposed DEI for the grift that it is. And you were knocking out the legs of their stool. And those are all major components of what just happened to the Democratic Party last night. So special shout out to Matt as works hard. And of course, the entire company, which, let's be real about this. Only Jeremy Boring would have made those films and would have produced those films. Only I would have signed off at a very tangential level on those films and let everybody else do the work and then, reap the benefits, which is what I do here. And that's it. But Matt, really spectacular job on that.
Yeah.
I'd like, if I may, I want to describe. I analyzed my own self. So last night, to my shock, I didn't feel happiness. I felt overwhelmingly shock and relief. Today, it's all happiness. But I figured out why, and I gave this analogy on my radio show. if you see a drunk driver just about to hurt a loved one, maybe kill them or certainly terribly injure them at minimal, and then at the last moment, it hits a lamppost, the drunk driver hits a lamppost, then what do you feel? You don't feel elation at that moment. You feel shock and relief. That the drunk driver is the left, the lamppost is the American people. The analogy to me is perfect. That's what happened, and that's why I understand. My first reaction was not, "Wow, terrific! Your beloved, my country is my beloved, just as my family. Believe it or not. I mean, if I don't have my country, yes, it's wonderful to still have your family, but people had their families in the Soviet Union. It didn't compensate for what they had there. So that is my transition from relief to happiness, like the drunk driver."
I think that's beautiful. I think it is a perfect analogy. And when every time that I've been drunk and almost about to hit the lamppost, I have nowhere to go with that because, like Matt Walsh, I slept 2 hours, so I can't finish any joke. Instead, I'm going to kick this thing over to our dear friend, host of the Megyn Kelly Show. I think one of the most important shows that is not on the Daily Wire, and always a pleasure to have here with us, Megyn Kelly.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Did you feel relief or did you feel happiness?
Joy cometh in the morning. Cometh in the morning. I felt both, but I'm more in the happiness camp. I just feel like the people who are chopping up our children and opening our border and allowing these illegals to kill our young women are evil and must be stopped. They absolutely have to be fought and defeated. We tried being nice. They didn't listen. And therefore, it was hand-to-hand combat, and we won. We won. And so I feel incredibly gratified and hopeful about the fact that that nonsense is going to stop, and soon. Yeah. And we finally have a powerful warrior in the top position, and there's actual real agenda items he can do to stop those things I just mentioned.
You know, Megyn, unlike the rest of us who are mostly partisan hacks, if I'm being honest, you're an actual journalist, and yet you did something that I don't think you've ever done in your career, and you came out and endorsed Donald Trump, spoke at his final rally, if I'm not mistaken, right before, on the eve of the election. What went into making that decision, and what was it like, being in a friendly position with someone with whom you had so publicly sparred in the past?
Yeah, we've had our ups and downs, Trump and I. But it's complicated, as I always say, because I am not just a booster of his. I am a journalist, and so when he does stuff that I disagree with or that I feel an obligation to critique, I do it. And for some reason, I get under his skin. He doesn't like it when I critique him, and that's fine. I understand it. That's part of my business. So it's been rocky at times, including in the past year. But net, he knows I'm a supporter of his. And I know he's going to do controversial things and attack me if I, quote, attack him. That's how he sees it. Nonetheless, none of that matters. This is about the country, the future of our country. And there's just no question he's the man for the job right now. Even if they had a normal Democrat, I would have felt that very clearly. He's a fighter, and that's exactly what we need. That bloodied, in danger guy who stands up there with a fist is exactly what we need to fight these people who are not, just notwithstanding what you heard this morning on Morning Joe, going to roll over on any of their radical agenda. They're not. Their leftist base will not allow it. They're too beholden to them. I mean, I think Matt Walsh knows this firsthand. These little darlings are really important to them. They are not going to let go of the trans radical ideology. They are not going to let Rachel Levine go into the night and be forgotten. This stuff matters to them. So we need that guy. We need the guy who stood by Brett Kavanaugh. We need the guy who got up when shot. And so for me, it was a no-brainer ultimately when asked, do I show up there and support him on his last night with the message in particular to women who might be gettable for Donald Trump, but on the fence about him still and considering, can I handle him for 4 more years? And I just felt like the second point is they'd been so overwhelmed. They'd been deluged with information about how if you're a good woman, if you care about women's rights, there's only one clear choice, and it's her. And I felt like being somebody who is more, middle of the road in her politics, I could speak to them. I could speak their language to convince them as to why there is only one clear choice, and it's him, not her.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to have that conversation. Obviously, Trump actually managed to pick up a few points with women in the election, which is sort of to everyone's great surprise. And I don't think you obviously played some role in that. And I think it's very brave of you to show your shoulders here now that the Reich has begun. Obviously, it's all Handmaid's Tales from now on.
Megan, where's your bonnet? I don't see any bonnet on you.
Megan,
I got it right over there.
I want to get your take on sort of the left's reaction to this. So last night we were having a discussion as this all emerged, and we were experiencing the sheer joy and wonder of the evening as to how they were actually going to react, as who they were going to blame. My suggestion, because as always I was wise and brilliant, was that they would blame the American people. And they promptly have been doing just that. And it feels like this election has finally loosed the fetters upon them, and they are now finally just going to say the thing they've always wanted to say about the American people, which is that we're a bunch of rubes and hicks and horrible people, and it's not about social media, it's not about the Russians, it's just about us. So it feels like they're just going deeper into the crevasse.
I mean, we've had so many examples of that this morning. They, of course, have been railing about these damn Latinos who for years now they've been calling white adjacent as they express their conservatism. And so they've got to be written off because they are a minority group, but it's not okay because they're not pro-Democrat. And, you know, that can kick you out of the cool club and suddenly you're white adjacent. And that means, I guess you're going to get mocked on The View every day. Then speaking of The View, you had Sunny Hostin come out today and rail on these damn uneducated people who are to blame for her loss. They're uneducated. And of course, by that, what she means is non-college educated, which in her elite world, she went to Harvard, her son's at Harvard.
Sunny Hostin went to Harvard?
You're dumb.
What
Yeah.
Really?
Pretty
Oh my
sure she
God.
went to Harvard. Yeah, for,
No. Oh, God,
I
it's
could be wrong,
so
on law
shameful.
school. But her son is definitely at Harvard. And her daughter's probably there. And she's railing today about how her daughter has less civil rights than she had. Why again? You live in New York. You can get an abortion one day before birth. Well, I don't know what she's referring to, but she's deeply concerned about the civil rights of her child and our country. And they are all multimillionaires, including Sunny and her daughter, and they live in a state that looks like Mar-a-Lago. But she wants to go out there and cry like a victim, just like we saw from Michelle Obama and Beyonce and J-Lo and Oprah, who have been made billionaires in some cases from this country. But when we don't do what they say, we have to be berated for our racism, our sexism, our internalized misogyny. Take your pick.
I'm just glad that Michelle Obama will have exactly one single moment in her entire life when she was proud of this country.
Yeah.
At most, single.
She can hold on to something.
And Megan,
Well, I mean, the celebrity factor was so annoying throughout the whole thing, and it didn't work for them. And they don't learn. They did this with Hillary Clinton. Who on the Democratic side didn't stop to say, who is Trump doing well with? Oh, it's the working class across all races. Well, how can we reach them? Oh, I've got it. Taylor Swift. She's going to be able to rule in these white working class guys, these Hispanic guys who are feeling absolutely not. They didn't even try. They're just so drunk on celebrity that they did the trick they always do.
At least Taylor Swift is genuinely beloved and talented. I don't understand how we live in a time where Cardi B can be invited by the sitting vice president of the United States to address her supporters and give an endorsement. I mean,
what is Cardi B famous for doing?
Ben,
all my
your soul
hilarious
sister.
responses to that are unspeakable. So like,
yeah, I actually can't.
She
say-
teaches English as a second language.
She literally tweeted out something like, "What does pee taste like?" And then she gets invited to go speak for Kamala Harris.
I have a Kamala Harris joke here, but I cannot say it.
yeah, you can't say.
No.
In the last like 2 days of the campaign, Kamala also had, I believe it was Jennifer Lopez, Christina Aguilera, and the
Lady
rapper
Gaga.
Fat Joe, which are really powerful celebrity endorsements in the year 2002. And that's what that was kind of her
Right.
closing. That was her closing argument.
Well, that was what
and
happened. Sorry, go on. Megan.
J-Lo was out there like, I want to speak to Latinos and how terrible what they said about Puerto Rico was, and going on. Meanwhile, that didn't move the needle at all. This is how out of touch they are. And I think about the
Megan,
Oprah. Remember the Oprah round
I
table?
do wonder with J-Lo,
Similar.
I do wonder if people looked at her past judgments with men,
Yeah.
like P. Diddy,
It's a thing.
who she dated, and went, maybe she makes bad decisions about men kind of generally. I mean, when you're just going through the white party list for your final reach out for the campaign, it feels not like a great thing, probably.
Exactly right. I mean, not to mention, I don't like bringing people's kids into it, but she's obviously got a kid who is having identity issues. She's got a stepkid who's having identity issues. This is no accident. You know, they live in this world in
Yeah, of
which
course.
identity is everything. It gets prized, it gets pushed. They get social rewards for having said kids. They're conducting social experiments on their own children. Then they want to get out there and lecture us about the future of the country. And I'm so thrilled that America saw right through this BS. And not only did they see through it, it was definitely one of the issues that rose to the top of this campaign, and it made people vote.
Megyn Kelly, thank you very much for spending some time with us on this joyous day.
By the way, did I
It cometh.
promise? Did I promise I would take a drink?
Yes.
You did.
So is this the time to do that?
It is.
I was going to say
So
this.
I think people need to understand the last time I had whiskey, I literally don't remember. I'm not opposed to it. I
You won't
love
remember
tobacco.
this time either. Not with
Okay.
this whiskey.
Dennis, I would
What
hate
is
to make
this?
you
What
drink
is it?
alone. So
I understand. So what are you giving me so I can tell people what I had?
little Balvenie 12 double wood.
Balvenie 12?
Yeah, this is a,
Oh,
this is a
Balvenie.
very nice. We were going to
Sounds
save
like
it.
a shampoo to me. I don't understand. I don't bet
Even better than
Balvenie 12.
Balvenie 11.
All right, what
Thank
is
you, sir.
is it a
More
scotch?
than
What is it?
So yes, it's a single malt.
Do you like drinking? Oh, you don't either?
We were going to save this.
Yeah, for what?
Well, let's let the people at home see this great moment from last night's show
Oh.
where we learned that Dennis had not had a drink in some of our lifetimes.
Here's my vow then. If Trump wins, I will drink anything you give me, which
All
is
right.
more than I have drunk in 50 years.
Oh,
I love tobacco. I don't like alcohol. I will drink.
You will raise a glass.
It is no question about it.
And so
Well, I'm really on tape here. Yeah. Okay. I give you.
you're a man of your word.
I am a man of my word. So what I do know this question. What proof is it?
It's that's 600 proof, I think.
Yeah,
So, oh, you know, you're a
300%
sadist.
alcohol by volume.
That was cruel.
We'll find.
Oh,
You'll find out soon enough. What
This
proof
is to make it masculine and official.
Mhm.
We got you.
Wow.
That is a form of heresy. Put that-
Oh, I
Yeah,
get an
really.
umbrella. That is cool.
A
To
chin
joy,
chin.
Brad,
Yes, that is
vibes.
correct.
Yes.
If I have to drink, it's with you guys. I want to do it. All right. You don't drink?
I do, but I'm not at this hour of the morning.
Not at this hour. Okay. By the
Wow.
way, do you all love this? I'm just curious.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
no issue with that. Yeah. Okay. So
I basically
is this-
don't drink.
you too?
I basically don't drink, but I drink. I'll have a drink.
Okay.
And I
here we
drink
go.
for the
All
two
right,
of
yeah.
us, actually,
Yeah.
so it balances out.
You take both glasses.
I do. I can't wait for Dennis to start speaking in cursive during Kamala's speech.
It's tasty.
It
There
is
you
tasty.
go.
This is a letdown because the setup was you would drink anything we hand to you.
Yeah. Oh,
And
you
we're
got
handing you
yeah.
nice
Beautiful
scotch.
scotch.
Right. Oh, yeah.
What is
Oh.
this?
You're lucky he didn't.
Where
get to
his
choose.
mind went
Yeah.
is really
I mean, there. That's
the
We
man who
pursued the game.
exposes DEI.
They are setting
No,
up.
I'm not joking.
No.
This, it's tasty.
We just got him off the wagon for the first time in day. Dennis is going to end up in a gutter now.
I was going to
because
say.
of it.
Wait,
at the end of the
so
guy's career.
seriously, what is it known? Is it a scotch? Is it a, what is it?
single
Scotch,
malt.
single malt scotch.
Single malt scotch. My
Yeah.
son loves it. My father loved it. I am the black sheep in my family.
Dennis, if you drink anymore, you'll be eligible to run for president as the vice president of Joe Biden. So
Yeah.
they
I
are
can't
taking-
believe I'm enjoying it. I can't believe it.
Well,
and by the way, Dennis, you
Yeah.
think your first glass is good? The third and fourth glass are much
Seventh is the best one. Yeah.
they're over at Howard
So the
University
best
right now
is this
setting
with
it
the
up.
cigar. Where's the story with the cigars?
I put in an order for cigars. I
there
don't
will
know.
be there will be cigars.
Okay.
Listen, this is what
Pace
happens.
yourself.
This is what happens when you want to surprise Dennis Prager with a little pink umbrella. I specifically told the team to have all this ready for after the concession
Yeah.
speech. We're going to have a nice cigar. We're going
Oh, I blew it
Listen,
by mentioning.
You blew it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's fine.
yeah. I'm
It's fine.
sorry. You should have told me. That would.
Drink essential.
tie. That is because my mother gave me this tie. And I think about 2003. I'm not bragging or nothing. It is a part of the official Donald J. Trump tie collection.
There you go.
I don't know where she got it. It might have been at TJ Maxx. It might have been at Macy's. I don't know. I have had it in my closet for about 20 years. It's obviously held up very well, as has the president. And I figure if one does not wear the DJT tie today,
Right.
because I actually feel real vindicated about this whole thing. You know, there are many people tolerate Trump because they say, I don't like his tweets or whatever, but I like his policy. I like the guy, especially being a New Yorker. I like the guy. And so I've thought he's actually a pretty good candidate. And people say he's a terrible candidate, but, you know, he somehow makes it across. I thought he was a pretty good candidate. And then 2020 happened. I said, okay, I don't know, maybe we'll see. The fact that this guy won the Electoral College by a lot, that he won the popular vote, that he assembled this coalition that is unlike a coalition that any Republican has done in my lifetime, at least. I think we have to conclude he's a good candidate. The guy, he did something.
He's a political genius.
He's a political genius.
Michael,
And he makes nice ties.
It's just a weird form of genius. That's all. It's hard to, I mean, geniuses do things that you've never seen before, and they break all the rules, and sometimes they get it wrong.
I don't believe that in 2016 Donald Trump did anything particularly spectacular. I think that Hillary Clinton did something spectacular. She failed spectacularly.
Being a terrible candidate.
That's right, which is why he was, as I've said before, why he was able to win with fewer votes, say, in Wisconsin, than Mitt Romney lost Wisconsin with, right? But what you cannot deny is someone then coming back and winning not only an overwhelming majority in the Electoral College, but also winning the popular vote. And what that tells you is that while what Trump did in 2016 may or may not have been spectacular, what he did in 2024 is a true feat of political.
Indisputably.
Only the greatest politicians are able to accomplish what he just
I shouldn't
accomplished.
say he's a political genius. He has a genius that he can look at something. He's like a guy who can look at the Rubik cube of life and solve it. You know, that he just does it. I've seen him do it again and again, and you can see him shift. Almost when he's talking, you can see him. You read the field and all this stuff, and he just figured it out. And I think, by the way, I just want to add this. Throw this out there. I think it's going to be a great presidency. I think it's going to be the best second term we've ever seen, because he has actually taken 4 years. God has arranged it, so he's taken 4 years to learn what he needed, what he did wrong, and what he's going to do.
There's another thing
right.
to add there, which is in 2020, if he had won, he would have been saddled with the Democratic Congress.
Yep.
Okay, in 2024, he has an overwhelmingly Republican Senate. The Republicans are going to take the House. He's actually going to have a majority that he can work with. And if you want more good news, because, you know, I bring glad tidings.
Like Santa Claus.
The Electoral College, I've mentioned this before, that they screwed up the census in 2020. There are actual extra votes in the South that were not properly counted. I am calling right now on the Congress of the United States, the President of the United States, to pass legislation that allows for the recapitulation of the census figures sufficient so that in the 2028 election, those votes actually shift to the states where they belong, because that's where those votes belong.
Great
people
idea.
being disenfranchised right now in Florida, people being disenfranchised right now in Texas because the count is not correct. And then in 2030, there's going to be another census. And if that census goes how people think that census is going to go, 12 electoral college votes are going to shift from blue states to deep red states. None of those are in the Rust Belt. That is all that's 3 to Florida. That's 4 to Texas. That's 1 to Arizona. That's 1 to Idaho. That's I believe 1 to Georgia. So
What do you think
less in California.
Yeah, coming from California.
5 fewer in California.
Wow.
3 fewer in New York.
What do you think the Democrats are going to try to do about that? Because there's no way they can just sit and allow that to happen. So what's their move?
I mean, I think they just lose, frankly. I mean, I don't.
Well, I think their move was the open border.
Right. And I think that they do not. Here's the thing. I don't see what their next move is, because the problem for them is that Donald Trump occupied the other half of the agenda, right? So if their agenda was normally 2 things, right? One was the kind of woke, racialist, intersectional crap, and then one of it was the sort of Bernie Sanders socialistic redistributionist stuff. The truth is that there's some crossover between the stuff that Trump has said about entitlements and where Bernie Sanders is on entitlements. Like the most robust arguments that have been used against Republicans in my lifetime on the financial stuff were Paul Ryan shoving Granny off the cliff and all the rest of it. You can't use that on Trump, and you're not going to be able to use it on Vance, because the Republican Party has basically said, all right, you guys want to ride across the cliff? Like, we can't stop you. So I guess that's the way it's going to go. And with that off the table, by the way, abortion is off the table too. I'm going to point this out right now. Abortion is a live issue in this election. It will not be a live issue in 2028. And the reason it will not be a live issue in 2028 is every state will have already picked the abortion regime that it actually wants. And the Supreme Court will have already spoken by 2028 and said there cannot be widespread federal legislation on abortion, which means it will be relegated back to the states. And by the way, you saw some of this last night, right? So for example, Missouri did pass a referendum that was a pro-abortion referendum in Missouri, and Missouri went by 10 points to Donald Trump. So people are already shifting away from thinking of their congresspersons, senators, and presidents as people with a fundamental task on abortion. They're thinking of their governors and their state legislatures as the people with the fundamental task on abortion. So you take abortion away from the Democrats on the federal level. You take entitlements away from Democrats on the federal level. What precisely do they have? Higher taxes and weak foreign policy and an open border? Like what's the agenda? Those are like the three least popular items.
I don't understand what you're missing about joy, brat, and vibes.
Another thing, if Trump had won in 2020, he still would have had COVID, and they still would have had COVID to beat him up with.
Yeah.
It was still this, it was right in the middle of.
And he would have had to deal with inflation that was being put, it was spending that was being pushed by Democrats, but Republicans let it through or didn't have the strength.
Although
to stop
Biden amped it up.
Biden amped it up with the Inflation Reduction Act, increased inflation. Of course.
My favorite name, yeah.
But he would have been dealing with a lot of economic challenges. That
Well, part of the grace that's obviously the country received enormous mercy from God here, but so did Donald Trump, because Donald Trump deserves a lot of blame for what happened in 2020. COVID isn't just a thing that happened to Donald Trump, although certainly it was weaponized against Donald Trump by not just the domestic left, but I think even the global left. But also the worst aspects of Donald Trump's presidency were his handling of COVID. And in a way, God spared him from having to be the one who paid the immediate price for those policies that he allowed to happen. I mean, he surrendered the country to Anthony Fauci for months and months and months.
Although you're right, I think you're too hard on him, since every other Western leader did the same thing except Ron DeSantis and Sweden.
Well,
but eventually,
but I don't think this is fair. I think that we should hold Donald Trump to a high standard. I don't think we should hold him to no standard. Donald Trump doesn't purport to be like every other Western leader. He purports to be the one of one, the wrecking ball, the guy who can't be pushed around, the guy who sees through the bull crap, the guy who doesn't buy the conspiracies. And I would further say that when we point to the way that the global Western leaders responded to COVID, I believe that a large portion of what originally inspired their response was attempting to defeat Donald Trump. Meaning that I even think that the heads of states of other nations were engaged in some level in a try to defeat Donald Trump, because he had made them all crazy. And when Donald Trump gave his "we're going to reopen on Easter Sunday" speech, which was basically America will rise again on the day that Christ rose, it was one of the great speeches, I believe, in American presidential history. Had he done it, I would have voted 4 times for him.
No, I agree with you about
he didn't.
I agree with you. I don't think he handled it well. I'm not sure. Again, I just think you're being too hard on him. There was this thing. Who would you listen to if a plague came through?
Literally last night, though, we were saying that maybe he shouldn't have gone to war in Afghanistan, when literally any president of the United States, left, right, center, RFK Jr., Ron Paul, would have bombed Afghanistan over 9/11.
Not Ron Paul, but all the other ones.
But first, I agree that Trump did the wrong thing, but also George W. Bush had a freedom agenda for the Middle East, which was a big mistake.
George W. Bush developed a freedom agenda for the Middle East after 9/11 and the realization that we had to go to war in Afghanistan.
That's what I'm saying.
But anyone would have gone to war in Afghanistan.
Okay, but
Hold on. Donald Trump would go to war in Afghanistan if they knocked down the Twin
Putting all
Towers.
that aside, I think that you're arguing past each other just a little bit, in the sense that whether it's not a matter of blame. The reality is that bad decisions were made during 2020 by President Trump, decisions that none of us liked. He got a reprieve by the American people.
Yes.
The American people, we're giving Donald Trump a lot of credit, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit, right? I mean, I really think that, I read the famous Teddy Roosevelt quote on the air today about the man in the arena, right? I mean, that really is Donald Trump. He deserves an enormous amount of credit. The people who deserve the credit are the people who voted for Donald Trump. The people who showed up in droves to vote for Donald Trump because they rejected all the things that they were being told about themselves and about their country. Now, there are a lot like anything I've ever seen in my lifetime. The last month of this campaign alone was
A
just lie
tsunami,
after
a
lie
tsunami
after
of
lie.
lies. You don't even need to add about Donald Trump. They stood up
Yes.
against the tsunami of lies. This is what I am convinced that they're charged that Trump always lies, and the Washington Post, which is almost defunct, listed 2,000 lies allegedly.
Yeah.
But name one lie of Donald Trump that compares to the Russian collusion with the Trump campaign lie. Name one that compares to men give birth.
Yeah,
I mean, the list of lies from the left is so enormous. 51 heads of intelligence said that the
Hunter's laptop.
Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation.
But by the way, many of those were actively in the government,
Yes.
which is treason.
But this is sort of why I totally see your point, Ben, that, you know, in answer to a Sam Harris of the world, you can say, look, I don't really care about the politicians as individuals. I care about what they represent and the people who support them. But I also think we don't have to concede the point. Donald Trump has much better character than Kamala Harris and then Joe Biden.
That's right.
And then any of these Democrats.
That's correct.
I agree with that. But the point that I was making is, because I'm trying to argue in that case to the median voter who's looking at this and may have problems with how Donald Trump acts on the public stage.
Yeah.
But I mean, I started that little speech right there by saying that he is the man in the arena.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is, as I said yesterday, I'll go back to it. The best biblical analog to Donald Trump is not King David. It is Noah. He is a man for the time. He is a complete man. He's
That's great.
Ish Tzaddik Tamim Bedorotav, right? In his generation, he is a complete person in his generation. Okay, it's a flood generation. In a flood generation, you need a man who builds an ark. Donald Trump is a man who builds the ark, and then the flood waters recede, and then he goes out. And guess what? If you read the story of Noah, he does some pretty bad crap right after that. But the reality is, he was a Ish Tzaddik Tamim complete Hayab Bedorotav, right? In his generation, he's built for this is a time built for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a man built for his time. And it's times that make great leaders, okay? Abraham Lincoln in 1830 is not a great leader.
Right.
And Winston Churchill in 1920 is not a great leader. I mean, he's out of government by 1920. And Bibi Netanyahu 5 years ago is in trouble. And now he's a man for his, great leaders are made by the time in which they live. And this time demanded Donald Trump, and Donald Trump rose to be the man for that time.
We're moments away from Vice President Kamala Harris walking out to hopefully feed us some delicious leftist tears. In the meantime, we have Daily Wire's very own Spencer Lindquist at Howard University, where the vice president is about to speak. Spencer, how are things going over there?
Oh, that's right. So last night in the early hours of the night, it was very optimistic. There was music pumping. People were excited. And we saw that start to die down, especially when North Carolina was called for Trump. Tonight really is nothing like last night in those early hours. The crowd is probably halved. Maybe I'd say 30 or 40% of the people that were here last night are now here. We've got shots of virtually empty bleachers. And I'm seeing, very sad faces, people giving each other hugs and just patiently waiting for Harris to take the stage.
So has anything burned down yet? I mean, that's the real question. When do they start burning stuff, or have they been so neutered by President Trump, who has saved all the dogs and the cats in Springfield, by the way? Have they been so neutered that it is no longer possible for them to riot?
We haven't seen any violence, even any protesting. Last night, afterwards, we went over to the White House to see if there would be people gathering outside, if there'd be protesters, if there'd be rioters, and there was really nothing. It was basically dead quiet. And, maybe they've just tired themselves out after a decade of going up against this man who, of course, has just been bouncing back from everything that they've laid against him.
Spencer, do you know when Kate McKinnon plans to croak out a whining dirge of Leonard Cohen's
Maya Rudolph this year? It's Maya Rudolph.
It's Maya Rudolph, right? You're right. Oh, well, that'll be better then. Maya Rudolph, she's pretty good, actually. I guess this Saturday is the answer.
She's a real talent.
Yeah.
Any predictions on what she'll say?
Spencer, have you heard anything?
We've talked to a couple people, and really, kind of the question that's on my mind is why people are actually coming back. Because last night, when that co-chair came out, the co-chair of the campaign, the co-chair came out and said she's not going to be addressing you tonight. You've got to wait until tomorrow. And by that point, we were already pretty certain on the outcome. A lot of people made the decision to just not come back out. Some people came here. It is a historical moment. without a doubt. So some people are just here. Really
it's
to
absolutely
witness the
historic
history
that
of it.
Donald Trump is vanquishing his second female opponent for president.
His new nickname is the glass
That was the
ceiling.
New York Times theory.
Donald
That
Trump.
was their biggest single theory, that it was a woman.
Yeah.
Remember I asked last night, what are they going to say?
Yeah.
So now they're blaming it on misogyny.
Sure, no, that makes perfect sense. That's why he got a 2-point bounce among women.
Yeah. They were
All these
misogynist.
Women know what's up.
misogynistic
You know?
women.
Those voters. They know what's up.
Self-hating women. They were.
I'm sorry, Spencer, I cut you off to make a joke. That's just how we do it around here. Are people starting to take down
no
their
worries.
boards around the DC area?
You know, the DC area right now, I mean, we were out kind of just walking the streets earlier, and it's pretty quiet. You know, this is a D plus. I mean, it's 80 or 90% Democrat really within the district itself. So the mood is somber, even just on the streets of DC. But of course, specifically here in this party, it is especially somber. And I'm seeing people kind of, I saw one group sitting in a circle, kind of commiserating, and talking about what the next 4 years look like. Of course, those were all Harris supporters, and they were there kind of reassuring each other, hugging each other. It looked like a little bit of a therapy circle almost.
Spencer, has
I imagine we're
anyone,
going to see more of
is
that.
he here? Is he here? Yeah.
There's
Spencer, has anyone seen you smiling?
I think a couple people have caught me. I went up to go up and interview a few
That's
people.
gutsy.
They
That
saw
is
the
gutsy.
grin.
Laugh in their face. Laugh directly in their faces. Get it on camera.
Spencer Lindquist, thanks for being with us.
If you insist.
From Howard University, where Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to take the stage any moment to give her concessions.
Can I say one thing about the speech? It does. She does have the opportunity to actually give an important speech, and she could actually say some things that, in some way, if not unify the country, at least assure her supporters that this guy is not actually Hitler.
Matt, I have a question.
It's not going to happen. It will not happen.
Yeah,
I'm saying that
it never happened.
It will not happen in 1,000 years. I'm just pointing out that this doesn't have to be a totally useless speech. She could do something. It could be, if she had any integrity at all, she could actually help the country with this speech, but she won't.
Why
So-
deal with
You
counterfactual?
should totally throw Joe Biden under the bus. That'd be entertaining.
That would be
I mean, I
fun.
think instead of saying what she should say, let's say what we're rooting for her to say. So what I'm rooting for her to say is for her to come out and be like, listen, we all knew old Joe had to go in 2022. And he didn't go in 2022. Instead, he stuck around. Then he stuck me with his bag, and I had to somehow run this thing across the finish line.
Don't blame me.
And don't blame me. It wasn't me. It was Joe. And then somebody's going to have to come drag Doug Emhoff out off the stage before he spots a nanny.
Wait, you think they're still married?
I think Doug Emhoff is the happiest man in America today. I think the idea that he wanted to be first gentleman is ridiculous on its face. Like that is it. That is a dude. Given his personal history, that is somebody who's very happy to be going back to Beverly Hills.
Yes. Isn't the only thing that she can blame just the Don Corleone lament? If only we had more time.
Yeah,
Isn't
that's what
it,
I'm
right?
thinking.
Yeah.
You have to understand it was a last minute thing, and we did the best we could for that. Right.
Yeah. Because then it doesn't offend anybody. She doesn't have to take responsibility. It is plausible. I mean, it was absurd that they swapped out their nominee at the last minute.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is her next run. That's really what I'm looking for. I think Kamala Harris 4.0 will be so much better than Kamala Harris 3.0 ever was.
Yes.
I mean, each upgrade has been treated with just rapturous joy by the media. So I can't imagine. It's like the iPhone 16, just a new reissue that's just going to get better with every single update.
The reason she gets better.
There is a way forward, to Matt's point, really, where the cooler heads in the Democrat Party start to seize back the party from the radical.
Only
base.
Rhetorically. It will be pure rhetoric.
Well, they always govern too far to the left.
Okay, that's very important that everyone know that. They will veer toward the center. We really overdid it on X, Y, and Z. And then as soon as they have power, they will go back to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's probably true.
So here's a question from a Daily Wire member. If you're not a member, please consider joining us at dailywire.com/subscribe. If you use promo code Trump, you get 47% off because he is the 47th president. And our members make it possible for us to do the work that we do. Is there any concern that the left won't give up power come January?
No.
Not in my mind, no.
They just got clobbered. If it were close, then maybe, but they just got totally creamed.
Right.
That's going to be fun, though. Kamala gets to preside over the certification.
Yeah.
The great loser, one of the great losers is the New York Times.
Oh.
This is really important that people understand this. The New York Times is no longer, I was telling Ben earlier, I will never use the term mainstream media again. It is just left-wing media. They are the outliers. We are now much more mainstream.
Yeah.
PragerU, Daily Wire, all the,
Joe
Megyn
Rogan.
Kelly,
Joe Rogan is
Joe
the most
Rogan. I mean, the whole gang. We are now mainstream. They are left-wing media. The only people that read the New York Times are leftists. It is a fact. That is it.
Yeah.
The New York Times now realizes, to some extent, I don't think fully, they have no influence on the country. None. To say to the average American, the New York Times said, you might as well say, well, Harvard said.
Yeah.
Right.
Slave.
It
But
is
funny.
it is a
New York-
tragedy because the New York Times is the best digital media company in the world, which is an amazing thing to say. 4 years ago, they weren't a digital media company at all. It's they are Blockbuster who became Netflix. It's the greatest transformation I've ever seen of a company, maybe in history. The other reason it's tragic is they still do the best journalism of any publication in the world. It's no one on the right can yet field a fraction of the actual investigative journalistic power that can be fielded by the New York Times. We can't field a fraction of the Washington Post. We can't field a fraction of the Wall Street Journal. And so to see that, well, just those three that I just named, they control something like 80% of all the actual investigative firepower in the country. It is a real loss to the country that those institutions, which were always of the left, have become leftist, which is different. They've become instruments of the Democrat Party.
By the way, if you're talking though about raw news, I know I read one of the only newspapers I read every day. By the way, I do read the New York Times physical edition, not just digital every day, just for the record. But that's just to know what the left is saying, not to really learn about the world. The Telegraph in Britain, that is a magnificent newspaper. The Epoch Times is a magnificent newspaper, in my opinion. The National Post in Canada. I mean, they don't have the money to have reporters in Rwanda.
Yeah.
But there are news sources worthy of noting.
But it is true. You're absolutely right that they have all that firepower, but they have become kind of porn. I mean, I was thinking about them this morning that they really have been relegated to porn.
Well,
And by the way, the Daily Wire, you guys have a lot of news.
Yeah.
I mean,
we don't have
I go to you for news.
Yeah.
No,
But we don't have
the other thing is that what they realize is that as their margins began to shrink, they became fan service.
That's
And
right.
the most ardent fans were left wingers, and so they just kept doubling down on their fan service.
Audience capture
It's a
is
vicious circle. Yeah.
audience capture is one of the truly pernicious phenomena of the digital age.
I mean, and you can tell because I think the only person at the New York Times who voted for Trump in all likelihood is Ross Douthat, right? I mean, Ross is the only one who probably even considered that. At the Washington Post, there's literally no one.
Yeah.
Right.
The Washington Post, I think that now that Hugh Hewitt stepped away, right?
Right.
Now that Hugh
That's
quit,
right.
there's literally no one there.
Wait, Hugh quit? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Nah, I kid. It's fantastic.
So every major newspaper, the biggest newspapers in the country, don't have anyone who's even writing for their editorial page who can even say that they voted for a person the majority of Americans voted
That's right.
for in the last election cycle.
At the New York Times, the conservatives who are allowed to contribute to the editorial section all voted for Kamala.
Other than Ross Douthat.
Right.
But he's the one.
Well, first of all, you say all. It's three.
It's three.
Yeah. And I still don't know. I don't know. I know what's conservative about Brett Stephens, obviously Ross Douthat, but what is conservative about David French?
Well, I think that David French is still committed to most of the same values that he was committed to.
Does it come through in his column?
I don't think he is.
Well, no,
there's no evidence. 10 years ago, he was a libertarian.
No,
and that's why he gets the
because
credit today.
Because he is so outraged by Donald Trump that he's willing to side against the people who want to advance the things that he writes in favor of.
He doesn't
What's a
sound to me
conservative
like
So
that.
he's abandoned our values out of hatred of Trump.
Yeah.
That's called derangement.
Well, that is true. Well, certainly, I think it is derangement. No question about it. I don't think that it's the same as him being a leftist. It is
correct.
The practical effect is the same.
Yes, that's all that matters.
Practical effect is
Right.
the same.
He's become a quisling for the left in a bizarre belief that if he does so, eventually a right that he approves of will emerge.
That's right.
You know,
Right?
I was
that's
on
the problem.
today. I was on Piers Morgan's show with Joe Walsh, who was a right-wing radio host and congressman who then, I think he ran for president, but he
Yeah,
just
that's
supports
right,
Democrats now. And he said, we were arguing about something. He said, but Michael, you don't understand. I'm a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. And I thought, I actually kind of like the guy, but I thought, man, you can't. I think you get like 3 election cycles. If you don't vote for a Republican, you're out. Okay.
And it is true that their derangement causes them to also not support any other Republicans. So when you have, listen, I said last night, I think Jonah Goldberg is one of the greatest writers in the country, and yet he can't even support a Ron DeSantis. They can't even support a Ron DeSantis because Trump has made them so mad that anything that isn't
and
like Jeb Bush, they're going to
completely
oppose.
Self-inflicted wounds because I had Jonah Goldberg did a course did a video for PragerU. Jonah Goldberg, I think Liberal Fascism is one of the most important books of the last 50 years. And he has rendered himself less important. I don't know. That's why derangement is not an invalid word.
Well, because I think that one of the things that's been it is happening on a lot of sides of the aisle is we now have gotten to the point in American life where if people don't vote the way you want, you're disappointed in the people. And you can't function in democracy where you're constantly disappointed with the people. It makes it very difficult to actually believe in the country when you're constantly disappointed.
But Ben, what's the Mencken quote?
Yeah.
Democracy is the theory that the common people
deserve
the people
know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard.
Yeah, and that's true. But it also means that you have to have faith that eventually they're going to make some good decisions, and that if they make a decision that you don't like, maybe there were some decent
especially to be disappointed to have these commentators that are disappointed in the people. Well, our whole job is to convince the people. It's what we do for a living. And so if the people aren't agreeing with you, then you could be disappointed in them, or you could be disappointed in yourself. You didn't make the case. You didn't make the argument.
That is absolutely true. And it's the people's country. Ultimately, they get to choose how they want to live. And
this is exactly my point last night of I didn't want Donald Trump to be the nominee. I didn't vote for him in the primary. That's what primaries are for. The majority of Republican primary voters disagreed with me. They win. Now Donald Trump is the nominee. The question before me isn't who. The question before me in November of 2024 isn't who would I like to see be the Republican nominee for president.
Right.
That question is settled.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is one.
Perfect. That's right.
And, on this point of people kind of coming together, the Republicans did unify here in the general, and the election was conducted efficiently and with sufficient margin that we found out on election night. Remember when we used to do that? And so I think it gave people, and this actually is important for the Democrats, even if they won't admit it now, it gave people a confidence that the system still holds and that the people's choices are still reflected.
That's another reason it's a big evening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I'd said before the election that the worst case scenario, the worst case was Kamala narrow, right? That if I had to have like order of what was good for the country, Trump big, Trump narrow, Kamala big, Kamala narrow. If you're looking at like things that because the worst case scenario that would have been terrible for the country is Kamala sneaking it out at 3 a.m. by a margin of 2 votes in Wisconsin.
Yes.
It would have been awful for the country at every possible level. So we got the best possible scenario because God has shined upon this country once again. But it is a very good thing. That's why I think you're not seeing, because it was a clear-cut victory. I think that is a good thing. And again, Democrats are going to have to go back to the drawing board, and they're going to have to think to themselves about what they have done wrong. You're going to have to go back to the corner. You're going to have to redo your homework. You're going to have to figure out exactly what it was that went wrong. Because if you think about Barack Obama as a singular figure who was elected for a host of reasons that really had very little to do with his policy, which is actually what he was, right? I mean, he was a singular figure in himself. He's a great speaker, obviously his personal characteristics, his race, all of that kind of stuff. The last successful national Democratic politician, truly successful, is Bill Clinton, who today would be characterized as a moderate Republican by his agenda. How do you run on a left-wing agenda that the American people do not like without the signal power of a Barack Obama? And so the question is, they're either going to have to find another cult figure, which is what Obama was. They're going to find a celebrity cult figure like Barack Obama, or they're going to have to start re-examining the agenda of, say, James Carville and Bill Clinton, and maybe start looking at the blue dog Democrats once again.
I think that's right. And I think that they're actually, look, the only sane reaction to a defeat like this is to say, where have we gone wrong? And if you come up with the idea that it's messaging, which is what they usually do, then you're never going to get anywhere, because that's what Dennis was saying before.
That's right. Yeah,
about.
Thank you. That's exactly it. Yeah. It's just going to be a rhetorical change. I can't think of a single major left-wing figure who will say, gee, maybe I really am wrong on
But they're,
a person being able to change sexes.
They're in there in the rank
It's
and file.
inconceivable to me.
They're in there in the rank and file. There are actually some of them in there in the media. The question is whether they can yank back the party from.
Who's they?
The people who are going to be sane about this do exist on the left.
Can you name a name? I'm not giving you a hard time. I can't think of anyone.
So believe it or not, in the gender issue, Van Jones, right?
Yeah,
So actually, they're Democrats of color who are more likely to be the people who yank them back on those issues than the white Democrats. The white Democrats are the nuttiest of the Democrats.
Or even Don Lemon when he's being candid.
Right.
He also tends to track a little more toward the middle when he's not being pushed by CNN.
Cuomo now, Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo, yeah.
Will any of them say, maybe America was not founded in 1619? I'm not kidding. That's a biggie. That's as big as men give birth.
Oh, well,
America was founded in 16. I was giving you the list of lies. There's an enormous one.
That's right. Well, here's an idea. What if we just keep beating them until they do learn the lesson? Michael, here's a question from a dailywire.com subscriber. Again, if you're not a subscriber, dailywire.com/subscribe for 47% off. Promo code Trump. Will the truth of all the corruption finally come out now? Will leftists see the lies that they swallowed? There are people in our lives that bought all the lies and they still think we're the bad guys. Will they be able to see the truth once Trump takes office?
No, those are two separate questions. The first, will all the corruption come out? No, everyone is broadly aware of the great corruption in our government and our culture. Both sides of the aisle are aware of it, and they disagree a little bit over the nature of it, but they're aware of it. And some of that will come out, and I think Trump will clean house to as great a degree as he can in the federal bureaucracy in particular, and that will be difficult and it will be unsatisfying, but I think he can get somewhere. In terms of will Democrats see the error of their ways? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to take them a little while longer to do that because they've really bought in and they've accepted their views, not so much as a matter of practical political conciliation or just resignation, but rather as a matter of deep religious faith. And so
I want to know, in light of what you're saying, I'm waiting to see the left-wing source, because it was almost universal, that says, wow, America elected Hitler. Why don't they own up to the staggering horror of calling him Hitler? So say the New Republic had a picture of Hitler in the face of Donald Trump. Will the New Republic now say America elected Hitler? And if they think that, why are they staying? Jews started to leave Germany when Hitler was elected.
Well, Richard Gere did say that he's going to Spain. We have Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, now entering the arena here. It's not
a giant. This is another giant.
Giant among men.
Weirdly, he still looks happy, and no one knows why. Now he's just kind of being weird. But
I do want to say, Dennis, you're a very large, perhaps the largest on earth Jewish man. How many times have you been to Israel in your life?
25.
Yeah. Tim Walz, Israel is an American ally. It's the ancestral homeland of your people. It's the center of your religion. And Tim Walz has been 30 times to China, a country with that is not
a great analogy.
That is not his ancestral homeland.
Right.
That is not the center of his religion, and that currently has hundreds of nuclear weapons pointed at us, and with whom we've been engaged in a Cold War for 50 years.
Yeah, that's pretty devastating.
It's a remarkable. Vice President Kamala Harris, walking to the podium. We'll rejoin you as soon as the Vice President's remarks
morning. Here we go.
Are concluded.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran and the way we ran it. Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is, I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives. People who had suffered great harm and great pain, and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. It's you. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
Well, folks, that is Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States. She has just given her concession address. She is headed out, and lady, don't let the door hit you or the good Lord split you. I gotta say, she was a little more naturalistic than usual. Obviously, she's a permanent resident of the Uncanny Valley, so she can only take short trips outside the Uncanny Valley. She seemed to make it almost to the border of the Uncanny Valley that time, but unfortunately, she was then dragged screaming back to the center of the Uncanny Valley for the finale of the speech, where she talked about how there would be 1 billion points of light, not just 1,000, 1 billion. Yay, perhaps a trillion, perhaps a trillion. So many points of light, because, you know, when it gets real dark, you can see the stars outside. And that means that now that it's really dark, you can be a star too, just like J-Lo or something. Here's the thing about Kamala Harris. She was a big nothing burger. Her candidacy was a big nothing burger. She has always been a big nothing burger. And that little concession speech was also a big nothing burger. So there are a few things she could have said that would have been useful. Like, for example, you remember that time I said that my opponent's Hitler? Yeah, you're going to be fine. She said you're going to be fine. But it's very hard to square that with my opponent is Hitler and you need to vote to stop him. And everyone around him is also Hitlerian. Right? That's a very difficult thing to square. It is very difficult to square all the things that she said on the campaign trail about the threats to America. There will be giant internment camps, which Democrats were saying, that every woman in America was going to be put under the gun, that essentially all rights would be stripped from you, with the sort of inspirational rhetoric she was using right there. And here's the thing. If she had campaigned as this Kamala Harris, maybe she would have had a better shot. If she hadn't tried the scare tactic of claiming that Donald Trump was Hitler with 7 mustaches and more orange, if she hadn't tried that, maybe people would have taken her more seriously, or maybe they wouldn't, because it turns out that was just a bunch of platitudinous nonsense. Again, in the end, the thing about Kamala Harris is nothing, because she is nothing. She's a stand-in for a party machine. That speech could have been given by 1,000 different Democrats, nay, 1 billion stars of Democrats. It could have been any Democrat in the United States who gave that list of platitudes and bumper stickers that mean absolutely nothing when ripped out of any sort of context or any sort of meaning. And because that is the case, what you have to do is look behind the facade that is Kamala Harris of the Democratic Party. And that's the reason she lost. She didn't lose. Honestly, I would feel bad for her if I thought that she actually were a real human being. But the fact that she is an NPC and that she effectively is just a stand-in for a party, don't feel bad for the party that she represents, because that party is lying to you. They put up these platitudes and these bumper stickers so you don't look through the veil. They don't want you to see the actual policies they pursue. This lady who says that she was a prosecutor, this same person suggested on a questionnaire from the ACLU that taxpayers should fund the transition of illegal immigrant prisoners. This same person who is talking about how be friendly to the stranger who you just meet on the street, that same person was personally attempting to bail rioters out of prison during the George Floyd riots in Minneapolis. The same person who is telling you that young people, you ought to have hope in the future, was also telling young people that they effectively don't have any hope in the future unless they're having their student loan debt relieved by the grace of government. The agenda does not match the rhetoric. It never matched the rhetoric. The rhetoric is completely empty because Kamala Harris is completely empty, and that's why she deserved to lose. It's why no one, I noticed that for all the talk in the media about how she was brat and Joy and a wonderful candidate, Joy Reid said she ran a flawless campaign. That for all of that, ain't nobody talking about her running again in 2028. Weird. If she's that great a candidate, they should be talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. So I think we can all bid a fond farewell to Kamala Harris from the public scene. We can bid a fond farewell to Tim Walz who will be as memorable as Tim Kaine, meaning that in about 6 months' time, you won't remember who he is, except he sort of reminded one of Don Rickles in some sort of bizarre way. It's a cross between Don Rickles and Gumby. And that's going to be the last you hear of Kamala Harris. So once again, goodbye to Kamala Harris. Raise a glass at your exit.
Can I say I'm disappointed that she did not announce her reelection bid during that speech. That's what I was hoping for out of the speech, and we didn't get it. But maybe they'll run, like they're just running progressively more unpleasant women with each election. So we'll see what they do next time.
So Pete Buttigieg is next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She did a relatively good job on the speech, but I think she did a good job because it's relatively easy for her to be gracious, as she had no business being the nominee in the first place. She didn't really work for it. She's already made it so much further in politics than she ever deserved. So for her, I guess she can think, all right, well, you know, on this fluke, I almost became president. I made it to be VP when I really had no business doing that. And okay, now it's over. Joy cometh in the morning.
It's not just the bizarre policies that those speeches cover up. It's the open, the central policies, things like price controls, which is a Soviet idea, the taxing the money that you've made on your house but haven't realized yet, which is pure robbery. The misinformation idea that they are going to decide what misinformation is. The government is going to decide. Those are central ideas to the Democrat Party, and they're completely anti-American and unconstitutional. And it's we pick on these things, we pick on these things like funding trans operations for people in federal prison, but their open policies, their central policies are absolutely disastrous.
So I agree that the election was a repudiation of leftism, which is basically Matt's point at the top of the show. And I agree with Ben that in many ways, Kamala wasn't even a person running for president so much as she was a position, she occupied a space on behalf of the machine itself. They needed something that looked approximately like a human to carry forth their ideas. But people do matter in politics. And had the person we just watched for the last 12 or 15 minutes run for president the last 120 days, it's not clear to me that Donald Trump would have emerged victorious, because even though the speech was,
I'm with you on
that. I know that you guys granted Donald Trump immense superpowers and hold, but that person we just watched on stage was credible. Yes, the speech was platitudinous. Yes, it said nothing, but the American people don't always. I mean, they flip wildly between election and election on different policies. I have never seen the person who just stood at that podium.
Look,
I, as a follower of American politics, much more closely than most, one might say, I've never even met the person who just walked out to that podium. She gave a cogent speech. She gave an articulate speech. She gave a speech that sounded very human. She gave a gracious speech. She gave a speech that had a sort of political rabble-rousing kind of spirit, but didn't actually say anything particularly divisive or particularly offensive. I mean, certainly her Valium dealer either died last night, ran out of stock. I don't know. But that person we've never seen before, and that person could have made a run.
That's true in a lot of concession speeches. A lot of people give their best speeches in concession because the pressure's off and it's all over. And I don't grant Donald Trump superpowers, but he did get shot in the head and fight back. I think, just saying.
Listen, I voted for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump does a lot of good things. I become the most anti-Trump that I ever am when I'm sitting here hearing all the supernatural elements of Donald Trump. He once walked on water. And
the thing is,
the reason that wouldn't have worked is because at the beginning she kind of tried it, and it's not sustainable.
No,
it's not sustainable. She is as opaque as a pane of glass. She is you can see right through her.
Yeah,
you can see right through her. You can see all the gears moving. You can see all the tricks that are being played. You can see the agenda that's behind it. And so this whole attempt to portray herself as a sort of, just family woman who cares about the normie life, that doesn't work for more than 5 seconds at a time. And the minute that you think about it, it really, really doesn't work. And so, again, I think it's sort of offensive when people play act at it. Normality is actually my life. So my culture is not your costume.
Yeah.
Right. My culture being a normie is not your costume. The one where I'm married and I have 4 kids and I live in a stable household and I have a stable community and I go to a job and I come home from a job and I take care of my kids. Like, that's my normie life. And I like my normie life. Don't pretend that you're a member of my normie community while you're out partying at Drag Queen Story Hour with your weird husband, Doug. Like, come on.
In fact, to offer up something actually kind about Donald Trump, I actually think that part of his unique charm is that he never plays like a normie. So when he goes to drive the garbage truck, he doesn't take off his $3,000 shirt and tie when he goes to work at McDonald's. When he goes to work at McDonald's, he is the famous, wealthy, self-aware, self-deprecating billionaire serving you French fries.
Yes.
It's not, he doesn't put on the costume of normalcy.
No.
Well, he's not saying I'm one of you. He's saying I am not one of you,
but I like
you.
Yes, that's right.
That is what's different about it.
When I was down in the Rio Grande Valley with Cruz, the fact is Joe Biden had visited that same community, and that's the community where she made the famous breakfast tacos speech, right? Where you're the wide variety of humanity, just like the wide variety of breakfast tacos. Remember that? And they're still laughing about that. They're still like, what in the what the? Meanwhile, Donald Trump would be like, Cinco de Mayo, here's my taco bowl, love it. And
they're better than any of your tacos.
And they don't feel disrespected by that because guess what? Donald Trump isn't pretending to be Mexican. And he's not pretending that he knows anything about breakfast tacos. He's like, yeah, I went down to the local restaurant. I picked up a breakfast taco. It was delicious. I liked eating it. Okay, cool.
After the garbage truck stunt, he goes to a rally and he spends 5 minutes telling a hilarious off-the-cuff story about how ridiculous the whole thing was.
Right.
And how he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get up into the truck because it's too big and he's old, and then he keeps the vest on because it's slimming and he's fat. You know, it's like, and you watch it, it's hilarious, and you realize that. I mean, this is the difference. There's some difference between him and Kamala, but this especially, that Kamala is totally incapable of that, both speaking off the cuff and being funny for 5 minutes or for even 1 minute, but also to be self-deprecating in that way. That's just very.
Well,
by the way, that is a bone
question.
that Trump grew. You want to talk about Trump growing? That is a bone he grew. Okay, when Trump first stepped on the scene in 2015, 2016, he did not do self-deprecating.
That's right.
That is something that you actually saw.
Well, he had that great line where he said, "I'm supposed to do self-deprecating humor, but I've got nothing." Remember with the but he also he also had that moment. He had that moment on the other podcast, the name of which escapes me. Where he said when you invent an ugly name to call somebody, it's got to be like Pume, you know. And I just thought, like, that is brilliant because he's actually telling you he's a character.
Yes.
You know, he's playing the character to some degree, and he's happy to let you know it. You know.
Here's a question that is worth posing to people in your life that loathe him and loved her, or loathed him and were okay with her. And it just occurred to me now, ask them, do you think you know Donald Trump? They will all say yes. Do you think you know Kamala Harris?
Right. Yeah.
No one thinks they know.
See, this is a great point, Dennis, because we're saying she did a good job on this speech. Let's not confuse her with Pericles here. We're saying she did a good job because she didn't sound deranged or drugged up or comatose. You know, she still didn't offer anything. And so I agree with your point, Jeremy, that she would have done better for sure if we saw that candidate. I think she would have done better to like 235 electoral votes. You know, I think she's getting a little bump out of that, but she still didn't offer anything. To your point, Ben, she tried this at the beginning of the campaign. It doesn't work. It's not sustainable. One thing that might have helped her in the campaign is if people could have pinned her down on a policy position or an achievement ever once, even in her life. But she tried to be all things to all people, and without any actual convictions, it just totally flopped.
And I think the other thing that happened is that even when she would tell stories about herself, they would betray nothing about her.
Yeah.
Right? She'd say, she obviously relished in telling the story about how Joe Biden called her and said that he was dropping out. And how she said, "Are you okay, Joe? That was her first, "Are you okay, Joe?" But she said, she was doing an interview and she's like, "You want to know a detail that was happening then? I was making breakfast for my nieces." That was the detail. Like, well, that was riveting. Thank you for that insight into your life.
She loves Doritos.
Yes.
She loves Doritos.
That came up many times on the campaign show.
And you know something that you know about Donald Trump? You know why, for example, he doesn't drink or do drugs.
Yeah.
Because he has actually told us why he doesn't drink or do drugs because of his brother.
Yeah.
Right. And so like these are things that if you're talking about like personal, authentic details, these are actual things that do matter. I do want to raise a glass to the person who's even happier than we are today. And that, of course, is Dr. Joe Biden, the greatest doctor in America. Dr. Jill, if you're watching this, a tribute to you, madam, because let me just say, you and your husband did an excellent job of just putting that knife directly between Kamala Harris' shoulder blades in the late stages of this campaign.
Twisting it.
Wait, you and Donald J. Trump, you will meet on a beach in Zihuatanejo after where you will be friends, lifelong friends one day, because it is. I have to say, Jill hates Kamala Harris, and Joe hates Kamala Harris. And the happiest person today, I'm not sure, is President Trump. The happiest person today might, in fact, be Joseph Robinette Biden.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I just solved the election. Kamala Harris, not the brightest bulb, is introduced to Dr. Jill Biden. Dr. Jill Biden writes a prescription on a napkin to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris doesn't know that Dr. Jill Biden isn't a doctor. Kamala Harris goes and gets that prescription filled. She is stoned for 118 straight days. Can't form a cogent sentence. Drifts through her campaign.
Jeremy, I've noticed a sort of leitmotif to your commentary on this.
On the day after losing, the prescription runs out. She walks out on stage, not even sure how she came to be here. And suddenly she's cogent and coherent, but still not smart. Still thinks that Dr. Jill Biden is a doctor. But I don't know.
Just not doped up.
Just not doped up.
I will say, as insulting as the narrative the media ran out that Joe Biden was mentally competent, which was the most insulting narrative. And I think it really did have a market effect on this campaign. Like if Joe Biden had been the campaign since, if Kamala Harris had been the candidate since 2022 or 2023, this is a very different looking race, I think. The fact that Joe Biden did stick around that long and that lie was promulgated for full on years.
And that she contributed to that.
And that she and maintained that lie till today. We'll still say that behind closed doors, man's doing back handsprings and such. That the other lie that I can't, there's so many lies about Kamala Harris and her entire campaign that I cannot abide. Obviously, the one personally that I cannot abide is Doug Emhoff Jew. Like if I have to hear Doug Emhoff as an emissary of the Jewish people one more time, my head will turn 360 like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. And
Tikkun olam.
Vomiting in all directions. But the real lie that they kept saying is they kept telling us how qualified and intelligent she was. I'm sorry, she isn't. She isn't. The proof is in front of you. She is not a particularly bright person. And I know Donald Trump got ripped up and down for saying that she was a low IQ person. She is not a particularly bright person. Okay, she's not an 80 IQ person, but this is not a person who's 2 standard deviations above the American average. Okay, you watch her speak, and she's doing an impression of what a middle brow person thinks a very smart person sounds like, and it's a bad impersonation. And that lie was so transparent and so obvious, and they kept saying that she was intellectually outclassing him. And all you got was just this, just like pap and memorize pap, and like that. That's not intelligence. Donald Trump, for all of his flaws, the man has an innate grasp of important things. And it turns out that an innate grasp of important things is significantly more important than your ability to regurgitate platitudes that you memorized in the back room before a debate.
Yeah. The other lie is that there's one thing that I'm the only person in American public life who I heard talk about the reality of how our enemies perceived us elevating a woman of no merit to run the world's sole global superpower. It's amazing to me that we just ran this race and no one talked about what it would mean for our national security to do such a thing. There's another unique point of view that I heard during this race, and it came from Matt Walsh, who is the only person I've heard have the audacity to point out that she is not a parent. That she gave speech after speech after speech talking about how one of the hardest things she's done in her life was parent children, which she never did. She married a man with a 20-year-old, which is an adult, and a 15-year-old, which I know the world's a little different now than it used to be. My parents cannot tell you what I did from the ages of 14 to today.
Yeah.
Right? So she did not parent a 15-year-old. I'm not saying she had no responsibilities. I'm not trying to take away any contributions that she may have made in their lives. But when you tell someone that parenting is the hardest thing you'll ever do, that is not what they have in mind.
Yeah.
Also, J.D. Vance was right about this. He was right about the lonesome cat ladies. He was also, he wouldn't have said this, but it's also true that women grow wise raising children in the same way men grow wise working. And that is really why older women, you talk to them and they don't have to have the highest IQ. They don't have to think in the same way men do. And they say things you go like, oh yeah, that's right. That actually is telling me something I didn't see before. And she doesn't have that. And I think, it matters. It does matter. It doesn't matter that you have a leader with no children. It matters if you have too many leaders with no children. I mean, this is what invests you and gives you flesh in the future. And I think that actually is an important fact about her. There's something empty and missing about her. And I'm not saying it is because she doesn't have children, but it's because she doesn't have children. I mean, she didn't have that experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying also, though I do think the left makes a point when they say her sex was a factor here. I think it was a factor among women. I know plenty of women who wouldn't vote for a woman to be president. Okay, and it's politically incorrect to say so, but there are plenty of women who feel that way, and plenty of men who feel that way too,
I would vote
because
for
they think men and women are
Thatcher.
different. Yeah, well, but this is my point. There are women who can be incredible. Thatcher as a PM, or I don't know, Empress Maria Theresa or Queen Elizabeth. You know, so it really and women possessing, you know.
Although Queen Elizabeth wasn't actually a head of state.
The first, yeah, not the first.
Yes,
Second was she
was a head of state. She didn't actually run it.
But also grant the Thatcher exception, grant the Maria Theresa exception. Those are exceptions, you know, and Kamala ain't no Margaret Thatcher.
I'll grant you a Hillary Clinton exception.
Yes.
At least when our enemies around the world who have no respect whatsoever for women, who do not believe that women can be strong. The Chinese don't believe that a female president is going to be a credible threat against them. Vladimir Putin doesn't believe that a female president can be a credible threat against them. The Iranians don't believe that a female president can be a credible threat against them. At least when they look at Hillary Clinton, who did stare them down as Secretary of State, whose husband had been president and deployed the United States military, who was kind of a tough old battle axe by the time she ran.
No, there's no question.
At least when they looked at her, it was possible. They would at least have to think, well, I don't know, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
They don't look at Kamala Harris and feel any of that.
No way.
And I'm sorry, the world doesn't work based on American values, on very, by the way, novel Western values. By the way, and this is, the world works on strength and is run by bad men. And bad men don't look at Kamala Harris and think, oh, I wouldn't test her.
Yeah.
They look at Kamala Harris and think, I am taking Taiwan.
Yes. And by the way, she doesn't understand the thing you're saying. Right? One of the reports that came out like a week and a half before the election was that report in the New York Times that said that very early on she started receiving intelligence briefings. And one of the first things she did when she read the intelligence briefings is she thought that the intelligence briefers were using gendered language to describe female leaders of foreign countries. And so she literally called up the members of the intelligence community and asked them why they were using sexist language to describe female leaders of foreign countries. And this led to the formation of a DEI committee in the intelligence community in order to go through. And it turned out, by the way, they weren't using gendered language. It didn't matter. They still built up an actual an actual structure inside the intelligence community to make sure the intelligence briefings did not contain sexist language.
Goodness.
You wondering why Vladimir Putin might, test her a little, or Xi Jinping? That would be why. By the way, folks, we are so thankful for the sponsors that we've had on our Daily Wire election coverage. We want to take a moment to tell you about two of them. Well, after the countless long days we've had over the last few months, from campaign stops to this week's election coverage, I cannot express in all words how excited I am to go home and sleep in my Boll and Branch sheets. This is true, by the way. They are truly the softest, most luxurious sheets ever made. Now, if you know me, I'm someone who likes facts and logic. Here are the facts. These sheets are made from 100% organic cotton. They're breathable, ethically made. They get soft with every single wash. Unlike most things in life that claim to be premium quality, these sheets are, in fact, the real deal. I'm talking about the kind of quality you feel immediately. The moment you touch them, you'll understand why over 500,000 Americans, including geniuses like me, sleep on these sheets every single night. By the way, I actually do bring a Boll and Branch blanket with me when I'm on the road. They are in fact that good. I don't like the hotel sheets. So I should bring a blanket with me from Boll and Branch on the road.
And as Donald Trump said, we have to protect our geniuses.
Agreed. And Boll and Branch believes that too. This holiday season, give yourself or your loved ones a better night's sleep with Boll and Branch. Right now is their best offer of the entire year. For 25% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets, head on over to bollandbranch.com/Ben. That's Boll and Branch, BOLLAND, branch.com/Ben for 25% off. Limited time only. Exclusions apply. See site for details. I also want to tell you about our friends over at Birch Gold Group. You may have heard of them before. After holding our breath for the past several months, we can finally exhale. Work can finally be done on some of the major issues this country is facing. One of the most significant issues being our national debt. The fact is, our nation is broke. That debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. Michael, do you have plans to protect your vast savings that you have received at our hands?
I certainly do, Ben, because well, you take blankets and things with you on the road. I take bars of gold. If the apocalypse kicks off, I know. But I do invest in gold. And let me tell you something, over the past few weeks, I am glad that I have diversified my portfolio into gold. It's a really great thing. As long as the economy is a little bit, dicey, which is basically all the time, it is really a good thing to consider diversifying into gold. That is why you want a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group, my gold company, will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. Best news is, does not cost you, Ben, not one penny out of pocket.
Incredible. It only takes the removal of one card for the whole house of cards to fall. Protect your savings with gold. Text Ben to 989898. Get your free info kit. Plus, right now through Black Friday, you will receive a free 1-ounce Silver Eagle for every $5,000 purchased. As the exclusive gold partner of the Daily Wire for the past 8 years, you can trust Birch Gold as I do to help you protect your savings. Text BEN to 989898 today. And again, these sponsors, these are longtime supporters of the Daily Wire. So please support them because they support us. And by the way, their products are awesome. We could not do what we do without them.
I would like to ask the group a question. I pulled a Dennis Prager-like experiment this morning. I have a friend in New York who is a devout Jew, who is as shattered by October 7th as Ben, who is, I would say he was shattered by October 7th. And,
that's fair.
And should well be.
Sure.
And she's a Democrat. And I've discussed with her.
I don't believe you.
No, it is absolutely true.
I still don't believe
But
you.
it's,
But go ahead.
but it's true.
Continue.
So I've told her what I think in very mild mannered terms. And she doesn't believe me because she's got that Democrat thing. So I said to her today, this is going to be a great presidency. Watch what this president does, not what the media says he does. Watch what he does, not what he says. And just tell me if he's not better for the things that you care deeply about. And she's almost been all Israel since this has happened. And she said, okay, I will. Any chance that's going to work?
If it hasn't worked already, I have doubts that it's going to work in the future. Again, the reason I don't believe you is not because you're innately non-credible, although that is one reason.
Yeah, of course.
But
I work at that.
The real reason I have trouble believing that is if somebody is truly shattered by October 7th and truly shattered by what happened.
Change your entire personality.
If it changed your entire personality, I don't know how you can look yourself in the mirror and look at what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done to the state of Israel in the middle of an existential war on 7 fronts, and then say that Donald Trump, the most pro-Israel president in American history, bar none, there are no close competitors, that you are so bewildered and befuddled by Donald Trump that you have to vote for Kamala Harris, who couldn't bring herself to even say that Israel was not committing a genocide when people were protesting her rallies.
I can explain it to you.
Okay, please.
Yeah, she gets all her news
That's
from
right.
places like the New York Times. And so she thinks, oh, he's for Israel. He's
And the New York Times was not shattered by October 7th.
Yeah,
so
right.
she gets her news from something that has no empathy with her own reactions.
But
It's a farce.
That's the part I find bewildering, because I don't know how you could read the New York Times, which runs stories that, shall we say, are mildly non-credible about things like Israeli soldiers shooting children in the head for sport, right? They ran a front page story suggesting that's what Israeli soldiers were doing. And then they ran x-rays that were clearly not credible x-rays along with that story. And she still believes the New York Times. Every Orthodox Jew that I know canceled the New York Times in 1997. I'm not even kidding you, okay? Because that was the year that they ran on the front page of the New York Times a photo showing an Israeli soldier who is defending a kid who's having the crap kicked out of him by Palestinians. And they ran the story, the kid, there's a bleeding kid, soldier, and they ran the caption underneath the picture suggesting that it was an Israeli soldier beating a Palestinian child. They ran it on the front page of the New York Times. Every single Jew that I know, except for Dennis, who has to read it for informational purposes, every single Jew that I know canceled the New York Times if they cared about that. The New York Times has been a laughingstock in the Orthodox Jewish community.
She's not that into new.
By the way,
news.
I should point out that Donald Trump did great with the Jews this election.
Yes, yes.
Did great.
Yeah.
He won districts in New Jersey. He has not come close to winning. He won in excess of 43% of the vote in New York. 1/3 of New York City went for Donald Trump in this election cycle. There were trucks that were broadcasting songs in Yiddish about voting. I showed one to Knowles before the actual, but it was amazing. They're going through Lakewood, New Jersey with a school bus blasting out in Yiddish, vote for Donald Trump.
I want to say that this is a place where I think you have a little bit of a blind spot then. And it's because you have a very high expectation of people generally, and particularly have a very high expectation of your fellow Jews. The truth is, most people are only beginning to wake up to the fact that the media is not credible.
That's fair.
Most people.
That's what I'm saying.
That's fair.
And it is incredibly hard to change your priors. I mean, it's almost impossible for a person to change their priors. It requires the one thing that humans are the most loath to do, which is admit that they are wrong. And I'm not exaggerating when I say people literally take their own lives because that is easier.
I agree with
than
you.
changing their view of themselves and their view of the world.
Absolutely.
Than changing their
But
mind. And we have friends. We've talked about them on the show. I don't think it does that much good to name them because we have had relationships with them in the past. But we have friends who act today as though Donald Trump were never president of the United States.
All of them have done that.
Yeah.
They are not impacted at all
Yeah.
by the actual record of the man being president. They are still reacting to him as though it were the year 2016 because they came to a conclusion in 2016. By the way, I came to that same conclusion in 2016. I wrote a series of letters to my friend Dennis Prager in 2016. Some of the things I said came true. Some of the things that I said did not. The presidency of Donald Trump was the test of the theories that I put forward in 2016. And now I can tell you which parts came true. I can tell you which parts didn't. And I can tell you how that's impacted how I see
I'd like
Donald
to-
Trump.
I'd
But
like
they
to-
don't do that.
I want to react to your point about people not giving up what they have held, which is that's the great book, The God That Failed,
it's a
about
great
people
book,
who
yeah.
believed in communism and then saw that it was the greatest mass murder movement in the history of humanity.
Wonderful book.
So what people need to understand, and this is the central message of my life's work, has been the consequences of secularism. What happens in a post-Judeo-Christian world? That's been the most constant theme of all of my work. And the answer is that people do not stop being religious. They just change religions. Secular religions simply substitute for Judaism and Christianity. Environmentalism is a religion. Feminism is a religion. Communism is a religion. Socialism is a religion. All of these are religions. And an environmentalist is as likely to give up the belief that the world is about to implode from global warming as a Christian is going to give up belief in Christ. That is what we need to understand. They have adopted religion. The great quote is not from me. They say it's from G.K. Chesterton, but we have no proof that he said it, but he probably did because he was just so bright. But whoever said it, when people stop believing in God, they don't believe in nothing. They believe in anything. And it's only secular people who say men give birth.
Mhm.
Not all secular people say it, but only secular people say it. Why that alone doesn't keep people or convince people that God is necessary, even if you don't believe, you don't know there's a God, I don't care. I want you to understand what Douglas Murray, who is an agnostic, understands. The end of religion in the West is the end of the West.
You know, the thing that I'll say also to you, Jeremy, is you're right. I do hold religious people and my fellow Orthodox Jews to a higher standard. And that's because they're supposedly holding themselves to a higher standard. So there is a higher burden on you if you're a religious person to hold up the facts of the world against the religious values that you claim to hold central to you.
Mhm.
You know, the thing as a religious person that you are called upon to do is to place aside your personal valuation of particular situations in favor of the values that are actually eternal. And so if you are having such a hard time giving up your perception that the New York Times is a solid and wonderful newspaper, that you're unwilling to see through that because for some reason that holds an identity to you in some way, no matter how many times your fellow Orthodox Jews are saying to you, for example, look at what he's actually doing, just look at it, then that betrays it does betray a lack of principle in some way.
But most people read just the headlines.
I understand. So listen, ignorance is a defense, but at a certain point, ignorance is no longer a defense, right?
Of course, I'm defending Drew's friend, whom I do not know or know anything about, only because I'm a Zionist shill, and I assume that at some
I've always
point,
said that about you,
I'll
yeah.
be paid for my defense of it.
In shekels. You always get paid
in
shekels.
but no, all I'm saying is that the very fact that she said to Drew today, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Means that in this one individual case, there's some hope. I don't think that we can say that this is a person for whom we can conclude that ignorance is no longer a defense. I think this is a person who possibly is in the process of waking up to their ignorance. And it's difficult, particularly, I bring this up sometimes on the show, right? It's difficult for people like us who spend our time advocating for values. And when you advocate for values, you're necessarily advocating for black and white. You're necessarily advocating for absolutes. But no humans live within the realm of absolutes. Humans live in the very, very messy thing called reality. And in the messy place called reality, when we say, I only say this for the audience, you know my argument because you've heard it. But when we say, for example, if you want to have a successful life, it's easy. There's really only 3 things you need to know. Don't have sex before you, don't.
No childbearing before.
No childbearing before marriage.
Get a job, finish high school.
Get a job, finish high school.
And get married.
Mm-hmm. But Ben has cited this study many times that the 3 most determinative things: don't have a child before you're married,
Finish high school,
get a job. But most people to whom we're speaking, if they're not already living the life that we're trying to call them to, have already failed at 1 or 2 or 3 of those things. And so we have to make sure that while we're advocating for our set of values, we leave room for people to live in the messy world and draw near to. Because, by the way, we also don't perfectly embody our values. At best, we're trying to draw near to God, and we have maybe different points of view about exactly how that's accomplished. But that's the only place where I'm pushing back, and pushing back in particular because I think that you, in some ways, because of your superpowers, in some ways because of them, it can be hard for you sometimes to see that mere mortals sometimes are striving towards something. Because
I get that, but I will say that I think particularly because the last year has been what the last year has been.
Of course,
it is an angering thing that people have not woken up earlier.
Yeah,
right? I mean, again, I hope that your friend really holds by that. I hope that your friend does reconsider. I hope that the whole American people take this opportunity, frankly, to reconsider the inevitability and the reality of Donald Trump's second presidency and stop looking at it through the prism of MSNBC's linguistic inability to understand Donald Trump and start looking at as, is your life better? Because I think 51% of the population of the United States already concluded their life was better.
And they did what you said. They did pay attention. A lot of people, even on the left, have said that voters paid attention to the fact that life was better under Trump.
And I hope that your friend will make the check payable to Jeremy D. for it. We'll talk after. We'll talk after. Matt?
Yeah, we also just can't underestimate the extent to which most maybe not your friend, but the extent to which many anti-Trump people have just organized their whole identity around the simple fact of being anti-Trump.
Yeah.
And we talk about the cult of personality around Trump, but on the other side, there's this strange sort of answer to that which I'm not sure we've ever seen that before around a particular person, where you've got millions of people who find their identity in hating that one individual person.
Well, there is a deep religious phenomenon going on, which is, like so much of liberalism, just an ape and an inversion of Christianity. Just in Christianity, especially drawing from the Neoplatonic tradition that comes up through the scholastics in Christianity, going back to St. Augustine even, there's this notion that existence is good. So there is good, and good exists. We're not living in a Manichaean dualist world where there's the good force and the bad force, and they're ever at odds. There's just good. God is just good. And evil, in the Christian view, is the privation of the good. In modern liberal ideology, there really is no absolute good. There's just absolute evil. There is the pure incarnation of evil in Hitler, where you could say even Hitler's not Hitler, or now in Trump. When they say Trump is Hitler, they're saying evil is evil. Trump is evil. But that is an inversion of the Christian view.
There have been 3 major horror movies that came out in the last year in which there was a demon, but there was no God. I've never seen, even one of them was a sequel to The Exorcist. They were possessed, but there was no God. It was only if you believed something.
And you could bring in all these other religious traditions to exercise.
Religious tradition was as good as any other. I've never seen that in a horror movie before, where the evil is pure and the evil exists.
Yes,
but there's no.
It's a great example of this.
Evil from the point of view of a nihilist. I'm going to ask 3 questions from DailyWire.com members. These are people who support the work that we do, and I think receive good value from it. For example, access to all the shows, access to the films made by, only Matt Walsh of this lot makes any. But there are other films on the platform.
You made Lady Ballers.
Oh, that's true. There was a Lady Ballers movie. You can go over to dailywire.com/subscribe. Become a member for 47% off today. You could use promo code Trump. Trump is our 47th president. I'll never get tired of saying it. It's pretty fun. And there'll never be a 48th. So this promo code will last for 1,000 years.
He lied to me. He promised me that we would win so much I'd be tired of winning.
Yeah.
And I'm not tired of winning.
I slept for 2 hours last night. I'm tired from winning. I'm not tired
of winning.
Yes.
I want more. I want more winning.
Yes.
So as a preamble to this first question, I want to tell you about the most moving moment of the night last night. And two people experienced it. Actually, Caleb experienced it, and then independently, I experienced it. I think Caleb experienced the actual moment of it, and I experienced a version of it a few minutes later. But even for me, it was moving. The celebration had happened.
I think this happened to me as well.
I think
We
this
had just-
happened- I
we
think
had
this happened to me too. I think I know.
because I think it was a profound moment.
It was profound.
Yeah.
It was the only time I
That's right.
choked up. Almost.
Because so we probably all had a moment of this. The whole thing was happening, and our dear friend Siaka, Black Jeremy,
That was it.
Yeah.
walked up and said, he put his arms around me and he said, "I'm not going to prison."
I just wrote about this. Yeah.
And
Unbelievable.
Siaka was there on January 6th. Siaka did not engage in any violence on January 6th, but he was there. He was he had his home raided by the FBI in Southern California 2 years ago.
Day after a movie premiere.
No. He had his home raided 2 years ago in Southern California, and then an entire year after having his home raided, by armed agents, he flew out here for the premiere of Lady Ballers, which he had played a small and very, very funny role in. And when he flew home, they pulled him out of line at the airport in LA and arrested him. They had years, 3 years to have done this. In fact, they had raided his home and they arrested him at that moment. And so here was Siaka realizing, and I say this to say, there are genuine consequences of elections. And here was a man realizing in real time what this means for him as a person. And the question from the member is, do you think Trump will pardon everyone from January 6th and the people that were jailed for praying in front of the abortion clinics?
I think if he doesn't, that would be the worst possible sign that he's not going to use this opportunity to advance his agenda in any meaningful way. But I think he will. I mean, he must, and I absolutely think he will. I would be shocked if he didn't.
He might not pardon every single. There may have been people who actually committed acts of violence.
There were people.
Yes.
There were people on January 6th who
but
deserved to be in jail.
90% are political.
And there's an important point to make.
I agree with you.
There's an important point to make looking down the barrel that we have a Republican White House, Senate, and probably House. When the member asked this question about people who are jailed for praying in front of abortion clinics, they're talking about a law called the FACE Act, which was passed in the 90s. It was under Bill Clinton. It was a dishonest law from the start because it said it was going to protect access to abortion clinics on one hand and places of worship on the other. And that second part was completely fake. It was contrived to get the law through. That is not what the law is used for. The law is used to punish pro-lifers.
And pregnancy,
That's right.
pregnancy centers too. It's supposed to
protect.
to.
Never used to
And
do
they've been
that.
burned down, and
Of
nothing's
course,
been done.
and it is only used to go after pro-lifers who demonstrate peacefully at baby killing mills. And I am calling on Republican lawmakers in the House and in the Senate and on President Trump, who's the most pro-life president we've ever had. Please put all your political capital that you got behind repealing the FACE Act, which is one of the most unjust laws in the United States. Beautiful, innocent people, 75-year-old women who all they do is pray peacefully in front of abortion clinics are sitting in prison right now, in nasty, dangerous prisons because of this disgusting law. It's one of the gravest injustices in the country. Every Republican lawmaker, get up when you're sworn into office and repeal the FACE Act finally.
Absolutely, but before that is repealed, and that needs to happen, Trump also just needs to pardon.
And also pardon all the people who are in jail.
There are old women who are right now going to federal
It's an
prison
atrocity.
for praying in front of an abortion clinic. And so that's something that, and I truly believe he'll do this almost right away. He must do it, and I think he will do it.
How do you think, I love asking questions. How do you think Merrick Garland will be regarded to the extent that he is ever remembered? I mean, it's a serious question.
Yeah, well, he's your brother, Drew. So
He turned out to be a very bad human being. And that was the portrayal of him when he was nominated for the Supreme Court was angelic. And he turned out to be diabolic.
Well, it may even be the case that he was a better man. People are broken by the circumstances. Some people rise to circumstances. Some people are defeated by circumstances. We talked last night about John McCain. Again, John McCain patriot, John McCain hero.
That example.
And he gave into his hatred of Trump.
Yes.
And it seems to me that Merrick Garland gave into this hatred.
Right. So it's one of these great philosophic questions to which there may be an answer. Can you know anyone, including yourself, until you're tested?
Until they have power. Yeah.
It's a very, very tough question to answer.
Yes, and it goes to my fundamental problem as we've been discussing this of late too, with Christians in America in particular, with evangelicals who abstain from the political process to maintain their vision of their own purity, that God disciplines those whom he loves. That doesn't mean that God punishes those whom he loves. Doesn't mean that God breaks those whom he loves. In fact, it's in the Bible. I think it's a New Testament idea, but that a bruised reed he will not break. But discipline is different. God does discipline those whom he loves. And you are disciplined through trial. You're disciplined through testing. So I think that no, you cannot know yourself until you are tested. And I believe that it is the responsibility of a man to go out into the world where the tests await. And if you abstain from life to maintain your idyllic view of yourself, what you're actually doing is saying, I would rather not be tested and see myself as good than be tested and find out. Or probably more accurately, it's not be tested and find out. It's be tested and be made better.
You know, it's an interesting paradox that, as Jordan said last night, and this is absolutely true, the left looks at every relationship in terms of power. Power is the only reality they believe in, and yet they never question what it's going to do to people to have the power, for instance, to redistribute wealth, which is, to me, the great flaw in Marxism, is that there's this entity, the state, that is going to do all these things, but nobody's going to have any power. And, the minute you give people that power, they become corrupt. Power is incredibly corrupt.
So in terms of test, I'd like to share something that I addressed to Christians about, a year ago, after October 7th, when a certain eruption, I don't want to overstate how much, but a certain eruption of anti-Semitism took place in the most pro-Jewish, non-Jewish country in the history of the world since perhaps Darius's Persia. And what I'd said was not a lot, but I'm reading reports of Jews taking down the mezuzah from their doorpost. Mezuzah is this little box containing a little part of the Torah, love God with all your heart, and the credo of Judaism, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And I said, instead of Jews taking it down, why don't Christians put up a mezuzah on their doorpost? And I want to just say, and I'm almost holding back tears, the number of Christians who sent me pictures of themselves standing in front of their door with a mezuzah, and the Daily Wire is a perfect vehicle for that project. This is, you're not defying the Gestapo, you're not risking your life or limb, but you are doing something heroic. Just putting that little box on your doorpost.
I know several people who started wearing
Patty
Jewish
Heaton
stars, which
Patty Heaton did.
Patty Hinton did it. Patty's great.
Yep.
Patty, an incredibly devout Catholic and actress and Nashville resident, and longtime friend of all of ours, I think, really took up that cause. It's not in any way for a Christian a violation of anything. Verses in our Bible.
Exactly. Love God and love your neighbor, the two great principles. This begins with the love God.
Dennis, what do you think about this option? Instead of putting the mezuzah up, could I just wear a giant shtreimel? Because I think those look really cool.
The furry ones.
The fur ones.
So wait.
They're expensive.
Just wear one.
Just wear it
or
in general.
Put a picture of you wearing one instead of the mezuzah.
It could be my new headshot.
This is my favorite question of all the questions asked by dailywire.com members during the broadcast today. What concessions should be made by Republicans to keep this level of participation and support from the center and center left? Essentially, Donald Trump picked up enormous gains among non-traditionally conservative voters. The question is obviously a controversial one. It's what continued compromises should be made to keep that coalition.
You don't
place.
have to. Trump didn't give up much. He spoke in a somewhat mealy-mouthed way on abortion, which was the one issue the Democrats were getting some traction on. Other than that, and I don't think he conceded much, if anything, in principle. Bobby Kennedy was scandalized by his own party. Elon Musk was scandalized by his own party. The people on the left were just, the left had gone too far. And so they started to make this turn of their heads and their minds to the right. That's an opening and an opportunity for us. Just as, I don't know, when I was younger, I was less conservative. I was always kind of conservative, but I've become deeper in my conservatism over time. Well, good. Let's welcome Kennedy or Elon, wherever they are, but let's invite them to come a little deeper into conservatism. I think, they're on our team now, and team politics is important. So let's bring them in.
So that's very idealistic, and I think almost totally wrong. So I think the reason I say that is because Donald Trump went through the Republican national platform and stripped 3/4 of the policy out of it. He forcibly dissociated from Project 2025 and then said publicly a week before the election, anyone whose name was in Project 2025 could not be part of the administration. So the idea that he didn't make concessions in order to win a broader coalition is not true. Now, I think the answer to the question is it's situational. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really important, particularly in our line of work, is to separate the principled from the pragmatic. These are not exactly the same thing. And when you are in the practice of politics, the principle has to be tempered by pragmatism. So it's our job to say how far politicians are straying from principle. And then it's their job to try and get 80% of the pie. And so the question is, how much do you have to give up in order to continue to receive 51% of the vote? And I think, let's be real. It was a landslide in the terms that we use for presidential elections. And a landslide. Normally, if you say 51-48, that's now considered a presidential landslide. But in any other area of American life, if you said that you had a room of 100 people and 51 voted one way and 48 voted the other, you wouldn't go, my God, that's a blowout. You'd say that's pretty close. In other words, this is a very, very tightly divided country still, clearly. Right? We've had 3 consecutive, incredibly tight elections. And if you go back before Barack Obama, you had a very tight election in 2004 and a very tight election in 2000. This is a very closely divided country. What that means is William F. Buckley, who is now widely derided for reasons that escape my understanding. William F. Buckley once said that the purpose of a primary is to select the most plausible conservative candidate who could win. Right? The most conservative candidate who can win. And that is the same answer today. What is the most conservative thing that you can push and still win? And still win. It sounds like ugly to us because we're in the business of principle. And it should sound ugly because pragmatism is dirtying. It's what you said about, religious people getting involved in politics. It means that you have to make concessions and bargains with things that you don't like. Listen, as you say, I'm as Jeremy and I are exactly the same on the pro-life issue. I'd love a candidate who came out and tomorrow said constitutional amendment banning all abortion in the that'd be great. Also, that is a great way to alienate Elon Musk and alienate Joe Rogan and all the people who voted for. If Donald Trump had run on a platform that we all approve of socially, right, like traditional marriage, for example, let's say he went back to like the 2004 Republican platform, traditional marriage. No abortion, even if you took the George W. Bush position with exceptions for rape and incest, it would have been too much for them. Those positions, Rogan's not on board, Elon's not on board. Okay, that's the reality. The Republican Party just jettisoned 2/3 of its economic program in terms of spending. I'm old enough to remember the Tea Party. Well, not long ago. The Tea Party was all about government spending and national debt. Donald Trump spent the most money of any president in history up until Joe Biden. And so that was jettisoned in order to win votes. Pretending that didn't happen doesn't make the thing go away. And I think, and I also think it's dangerous to pretend that it did, because then you actually are sacrificing the principle.
But
it didn't change the principle. The principle is in fact being negotiated in order to achieve the thing. That's not a sin. That's just called politics. But that is how you get to
I think, though,
majority.
There's a little idealism in this view of things too, though, because we all remember the halcyon days of the Tea Party. The Tea Party in office did not accomplish very much. Republicans have not cut spending since Calvin Coolidge, by my calculation.
I agree.
So
the point I'm making is that the revealed preferences of the American people tend to actually be pretty consistent. Okay, here's where the American people are by pretty much every poll statistic. Okay, and regardless, this is not about what we want. This is what the American people keep showing. The American people on abortion restrictions, if you were to take like a national average, okay, because we're talking national elections, not in each state, right? Florida's going to ban abortion. New York's going to have abortions till they're 9. But like on the average, the American people are somewhere between 12 and 15 weeks on abortion bans. If you're looking at entitlement spending, the American people are fine with entitlement spending. They don't want the entitlements touched. They want that maintained. And they get very, very scared anytime anyone talks about a serious entitlement reform, including smart ones like the one that should have been done in 2005 when George W. Bush essentially recommended, for all the hatred we have, his proposal on Social Security would have made this country so much richer, it's not even imaginable. Okay, he suggested that we just take what you were putting into Social Security and put in a private savings account that would have been invested in the stock market. Can you imagine if they had done that? The stock market is currently riding at 43,000, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I don't even remember what it was riding at in 2005. I promise you it was a fraction of that. So all that's been jettisoned. Okay, and the American people don't care about that. They also don't want high taxes. They want low taxes. They want high spending. They want some abortion restrictions, but not tons of abortion restrictions. They don't seem to care too much about gay marriage anymore, right? Like this is where the American people
they want school choice and they want the border closed,
right? They want school choice, and then on our side, they want school choice. They want the border.
No, not just on our side.
No,
plurality on both sides.
I mean that on an issue that cuts in our favor. They want school choice. They want the border closed. They want a strong American military that deters war and prevents foreign actors from doing bad things to us. They want strong policing, right? Like
they want mass deportations.
Yes,
that's That's a majority view.
That's a
now.
majority
Mass
view, yeah.
deportation.
And it'll be interesting to see, by the way, I do wonder when it comes to mass deportations, whether the revealed preference of the American people will be different from the thing that they're saying right now.
Yeah.
Because I think when most people think mass deportations, they're thinking of the Venezuelan gang members who are taking over apartment buildings in Colorado. They're not thinking of, the gardeners in Los
Well,
Angeles.
Trump knows that.
I know he knows that. That's why he's not going to do it, by the way.
The other thing we're really fortunate about is we need some structural changes that nobody is going to really be thinking about. The whole thing about the bureaucracy, about Chevron, those are huge deals because they, I think of Trump, before the running back, I hate to use a football metaphor, but I love the game. Before the running back can take off, some 300-pound guy has got to knock the lineman out of his way. That's the way I think of Donald Trump. I think he is setting.
You should teach this stuff to Tim Walz. He might have won if he'd known this.
When you're running a pick six play. No, I think this is the moment when the future of conservatism, the structure of the future of conservatism will be built. It's not when conservatism will be built.
So I would like to read.
Will become possible.
I would like to read one thing to everyone and then ask Dennis Prager a question before we part. And here's what I would like to read you. I've not read this in advance, so you're experiencing it as I do, but I suspect you should grab your leftist here tumblers. From the official Barack Obama Twitter account, here is our official statement on the results of the 2024 presidential election. A statement by President and Mrs. This is the actual header. Statement by President and Mrs. Obama on the 2024 presidential election. They've decided to put out a written statement because, as we know, they're very camera shy. Over the last few weeks and through Election Day, millions of Americans cast their votes, not just for president, but for leaders at every level. Now the results are in, and we want to congratulate President Trump and Senator Vance on their victory. This is obviously not the outcome we had hoped for, given our profound disagreements with the Republican ticket on a whole host of issues. But living in a democracy is about recognizing that our point of view won't always win out, and being willing to accept the peaceful transfer of power. Michelle and I couldn't be prouder of Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, two extraordinary public servants who ran a remarkable campaign. And we will always be grateful to the staff and volunteers who poured their heart and soul into electing public servants they truly believed in, including Hitler. As I said on the campaign trail, America has been through a lot over the last few years, from an historic pandemic and price hikes resulting from that pandemic to rapid change, and the feeling a lot of folks have that no matter how hard they work, treading water is the best they can do. Those conditions have created headwinds for Democratic incumbents around the world, and last night showed that America is not immune. The good news is these problems are solvable, but only if we listen to each other and only if we abide by the core constitutional principles and democratic norms that made this country great. In a country as big and diverse as ours, we won't always see eye to eye on everything, but progress requires us to extend good faith and grace, even to people with whom we deeply disagree. That's how we've come this far, and it's how we'll keep building a country that is more fair and more just and more equal and more free.
Wow. What about the existential threat, though?
I want to say that this is a very gracious statement, much like her very gracious statement, probably written by the same person. And it is obvious that they are setting up their next move. They're saying, we believe in the peaceful transfer of power, which is obviously a repudiation of Trump. And they're saying that we have to abide by the Constitution. They're talking about democratic norms. They are obviously prepping to shift toward a full assault against Donald Trump for being violative of the constitutional norms. It's not the first time they've trotted out this particular play. I don't think it works again.
No.
I think you can only impeach the guy twice. I know that's not in the Constitution, but practically twice is enough.
Well, the biggest problem that they've got is that what are the things that he's going to do that they're going to claim are anti-democratic? Schedule F employment in the executive branch?
Maybe.
Like that if that's your best shot, my dude, like I don't think that's going anywhere. I mean, these are people who wanted to kill the filibuster 5 seconds ago and pack the Supreme Court. And so I feel like they're
now it's holy writ.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now they're not going to want to touch the filibuster for the rest of time.
Should we pack the Supreme Court, by the way? This is our opportunity, right?
And kill the filibuster? I mean, like, why not?
Let's go, baby.
Time to ride or die, baby.
And pass a national abortion ban and reinstitute Project 2025. It's obviously the right thing to do. Dennis, before we part company, you promised Ben and I a story about your sons.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So here we go. So it's perfect. I set you up all last night. I told you that during our sessions that I had said publicly that the happiest day in my life was in 2016 when Donald Trump won. And that includes, I would add in my speeches, the day my 2 sons were born. So the first question anyone asks me is, have your kids, have your sons heard you say that? To which I say, yes, absolutely. I now have proof. This is what I got unsolicited from my 2 sons. I have to find this for you. I didn't know if we would. I didn't want to interrupt with my personal, but it is so precious. And if I just can't, I probably can't find. There's so many texts here. Okay, so basically, first I get a text from my older son. Okay, and it's basically, I wish I had word for word. They're both a riot, my sons. So my older son says, now the day your 2 sons were born is your 3rd happiest day. I read it in my hotel room. When you start laughing when you're alone, you know something is really funny. So that was, so for those who wonder how my kids reacted, then my younger son texts, his last night was happier than the day I was born.
I think we can all raise a glass to that.
Yes,
To happy days and happy days ahead.
Right.
Happy days are here again.
Yes, indeed.
Dennis, thanks for spending this time with
You
with
guys,
us.
love you guys.
And to our
Yeah,
Daily
it's
Wire
great to see you
subscribers,
guys.
thank you. And everybody watching at home. What an amazing last 2 days. What an amazing election cycle. And we look forward to seeing
Remember,
you down
get
the
a
road.
subscription, guys. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We don't do this for free. Come on. 47th president, 47% off. New Daily Wire Plus annual memberships. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Trump for 47% off. There's never been a better time to be in the fight. Who knows? Maybe we'll just keep drinking and clinking glasses forever, but only if you help us. Only if you join the fight.
Right. That's right.
Here's a little glance at how we ended the night last night.
Oh my gosh, we have made America great again. Let's go!
Oh my goodness, 10-8, I told you, it's a 10-8 round, baby. Trump all day.
Dude, I want to cry right now. This is absolutely insane.
America is back. We're not a socialist country. Yes!
47, let's go, baby.
My heart was beating out of my chest. I haven't had that, like, ever.
This feeling is unbelievable. I am so excited. America showed up. So that we don't want that cringe win. A full circle moment for Trump, definitely.
This isn't a win for Republicans. This isn't a win for Americans. This is a win for the entire world.
What a historic moment, and no better place to be than the Daily Wire, baby.
Everybody wants to know what would have happened if we didn't win. I guess we'll never know.